topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners, and today we are going to be focusing on how to chase your dream across continents if necessary, and you can be a leader wherever you are at. So let's bring in our guest, and she has a fascinating story. So Robin, tell us that moment when you were a child, when you were 5 years old and you saw those and you were on safari.
Yes, when I was 5, that was my dream. I was paralyzed with polio at the time, and my dream was to go to Africa. My mom had read me stories, and my constant companion when I was paralyzed during rotations was my dog, Pat. So I would tell Pat all of these stories that I was going to go see his relatives in Africa. And it was amazing. Pat taught me how to do animal speak. So Pat and I could communicate. So I wanted to go talk to the animals in Africa.
So tell us, as you grew up, how did you deal with polio? And it's such a hard situation, right? Being a child and facing that.
Yes, it is. And since it happened in the last century, excuse me, I don't know if your audience knows very much about polio, but the biggest outbreak was in 1948, 49, when I got polio, a very long time ago. And there were 42,000 children who were paralyzed with polio at the time. And interestingly, they were mostly 5-year-olds. And they discovered that at 5, we run out of the natural immunity that we're born with. So it was... That year was called the blizzard of the century. So we were totally snowed in our little community. And so I was paralyzed with polio, but I was very fortunate that my autonomic system still worked. The autonomic system controls your heart, your lungs, your digestion. So, so I was very fortunate, but I was just paralyzed. So that was my dream, to go to Africa. And
how did you get there?
Oh, how did I get there? That was a long story.
It took
me decades to get there. But when I was learning to walk, it was very, very difficult. And my dad was my most important person in my life, most influential person. Because when I was learning to walk, one time I just collapsed in tears and crying and said, I can't do this. I can't do this. It hurts too much. And my dad said, never say can't. You can do anything you want if you just set your mind to it. And I said, okay. So he said, now get up and let's do this again. So we did. So that life lesson lasted me those lessons lasted me my entire life. Of I can do it. Anytime speed bumps came along, I know that I could do it.
That is powerful that you could do it. So tell us your story about tracking the lions.
Tracking the lions was absolutely incredible because it was this dream come true. And it's like you're living a dream, something that you thought about and dreamed about for so many years. And so we were there for 2 months, and we logged 45 safaris. And I'm a professional photographer, and we came back with 14,000 photos of the animals. And we were very fortunate. We got to spend a lot of dwell time with the animals, so we could really be there. So you could see what was going on in their lives. In Africa, there are 3,000 languages spoken, and not everyone can talk to each other, but everyone understands the language of the animals and the life lessons that they teach.
Yeah. So how did you get into photography?
I got interested when I had 3 of my own little children. I started taking pictures of them, and then it just morphed into weddings and receptions and portraits and more people's children and animals and photographing all over the world. So it became a huge, huge hobby of mine.
So how did you realize your dream of going to Africa?
Okay, so we planned and planned for it and got there and made arrangements with an incredible company that when we called, they said, what do you want to see? How long can you stay? And what is your budget? And I said, well, I want to see everything. So we set out to do all of the list, do the little checklist. So we made it to Africa. And some of the amazing stories were reliving some of the things that I actually had dreams about, like the story of the lion. Our guide asked, he said, what is it that you really want to see? What's your take-home photo? And I said, I want to see a lion with his eyes open in the daytime, because lions sleep 16 to 20 hours a day, which is pretty much daytime. So I said, I want to see a lion awake with his eyes open in the daytime. So our guide had asked us, we went on many, many safaris, and we saw a lot of sleeping lions. And I was a little discouraged that would happen. Anyway, he had asked if we were interested in doing a night safari anytime if an opportunity came up. I said, absolutely. My husband and I were there together. So there's this little knock on the door in the middle of the night, and it was our guide, and he said, I can hear lions fighting. Do you want to come? So we jumped in and drove, and we got in the Land Rover, and he was driving, and he brought along another person, and they had a seat mounted on the left fender, and there was another guide in there, and he had this huge spotlight, and we all looked for tracks in the dark. It was very, very dark. Looked for tracks in the sand, and we saw the tracks, and we could hear the lions roaring over there, and they were sort of taking turns, fighting, defending their territory, because that's what the male lion does. That's his big job, is defending his territory and his pride. And so we started tracking along and following and listening to the sounds. And it was amazing that the sounds were so loud, you could feel the vibrations in your bones. And our guide said, the reason that you can do that is lions have a special ligament in their throat that kind of expands, and they can pull air in across this ligament, and it can expand their voice, and you can hear lions roaring 5 miles away. It was amazing. So we could hear him, and every time he would roar, you could feel these, in your bones, these vibrations in your bones. So we followed along, and then suddenly the fighting stopped. And we looked around, and we turned the engine off and listened, and there wasn't another sound. So we started following the tracks again and still going in the direction where the lion's sounds came from. And then the guide with the spotlight on the fender spotted a lion in the grass. So we pulled up to the lion, and just as we're getting there, this huge African sunrise comes up over the flat horizon and shines right into this lion's face. And the lion is blinking because it is so bright. And then the lion turns his face and he looks at me. It's like a connection, an electric between two souls, and it was like I had dreamed about. And it was so amazing because the lion didn't drop his eyes. He kept that contact, and I didn't drop my eyes. And you could feel this in your soul. It was like a warmth in your whole body to be there with that lion, connecting with the lion. And then finally, he closes his eyes, and it was just like this lead shield came down, and and the connection was gone. So I got my photo of the lion.
Is that the photo on the back?
Yes, it is. It is. This is the photo that I took after he turned his head the other way. The one of him looking directly at me is a different photo. But I keep
Mm,
this in my office so I can look at it. Every time I see it, I remember that experience. That was so incredible.
mm. So connected with the
Yes.
nature, and how did that feel for you in that moment?
Ah, it's hard to describe in a way because it is just such a warmth in your whole body, and you could just feel this. And it's like you've been there before. Hard to explain.
Mm,
Like you've been there before. And I don't know if it was because of the dreams that I'd had those dreams, but it was like being there before. So,
mm.
so it was amazing.
Well, it sounds amazing, and kudos to you for chasing your dream. And
Yeah.
so many times, how did that become a profession for you? Like you mentioned that you have gone there multiple times. You were
Yes.
just going to go to Africa once, and then you became a professional photographer. How did that realize?
Oh, it felt wonderful because the thing about photography for me is the magic of photography for me is that I can take a photograph and then I can show it to someone and then they can see what I saw and feel what I felt. And
Mm,
that's the magic for me. And going to Africa, writing my book was that I could take those things and those photos and those stories and take people along with me through the pages of that book so they could like they were actually there.
mhm.
Like so.
And definitely. So tell us the story about the lioness cub hugs.
Oh, the lion cub hugs. That was wonderful. And that was another thing that I had dreamed about, except, yeah, I had dreamed about this. And we were, excuse me, we were driving along. Excuse me a second. We were driving along and and we spotted, this was late afternoon and the sun was getting pretty low in the trees, and we spotted these two lioness and they were sleeping, and then these two cubs, and they were just playing like cubs do, like like what you would see like a house do. And one would get down on its paws with his little tail end up in the air and swish his tail like a metronome, and they would play chase. They chased and ran, and it was so delightful to watch this. And then and then finally they got tired of playing, and this one cub wanted the mom to wake up. So he walked over and he sat down next to the mom, and he just kept looking at her eyes, and she didn't open her eyes. And he just kept waiting and waiting, and he waited a very long time, maybe 10 minutes,
Mm,
and she didn't open her eyes. So he decided he'd have to help her wake up. And so he would take his little paw and he would reach over, but he wouldn't quite touch her. Then he'd pull his paw back, and then he'd reach again and not quite touch her. And this went on for a number of times. And finally he touched her. She rolled over and she grabbed him in her big, huge paws and rolled with him. And lions, and she just kind of, it was a roar, a purr and a roar, with this. And she just rolled with this little cub like she was singing to it. And it was the most amazing thing to see, the tenderness that she was with this cub. And the lioness's job in the in the jungle, their job is to go out and procure the food. The big male protects the territory, and the lionesses are the ones that do the hunting. So the lionesses go out in a group of maybe two, and the others stay and tend the cubs. So this was their time to be cub sitting, and they will even nurse cubs that aren't their own while cub sitting, and it's just a delight. And to see the beautifulness of these cubs hugging and loving. And the other little cub that was over in the corner was watching and wanted to be included in these little cub hugs. So it came over and got involved. And then the other lioness wakes up. And it's so cute. Every time the lioness, no matter how many times we saw them, when the lionesses wake up, they go over and they rub faces with each other. They just rub faces with each other. And it is just priceless. They're all sisters. They're all in the family. And they're all sisters. And that's the greeting no matter how long they've been gone. Give me 1 second here. It's my little wild lion cub that we have at home. It's a dog. Anyway, so the other lioness comes over and they do their little cub hugs, or the little hugs. And then the little other cub is there, and they're all so priceless. And it's so hard to imagine this because of all the tenderness that they have there. And then we saw the lionesses on other times out hunting, and they were ferocious. And the lionesses weigh less, and they're very they're very lithe and very fast, and they hunt in pairs. And to see how they would attack an animal and bring it down was amazing. And then to see these lioness with these little cubs and the tenderness, it was just like, wow. You know, it was such a dichotomy to see. But of all the animals in Africa, the lions have the closest family knit bond. And they stay together, they take care of each other. Yeah. In fact, the only other animals that do that are so close knit are the wild dogs. They call them painted dogs. And these are amazing animals in Africa. It's the only genus there is. They have no relatives. They look like a dog, and people think they're a wolf or a cross between, but they're their very own genus called Lycium. And they're vulnerable. They're on the endangered list. But these animals have a whole huge success rate. When pups are born in that group, in this litter of pups, the whole group of them are responsible for taking care of those pups and raising those pups, making sure they're protected, they're fed, because they hunt as a group. And the wild dogs have a success rate because they hunt in a pack together. And they're very organized, and they have these huge, big ears, big round ears, and excellent hearing and sight, and they're very fast. They can run like 35 miles an hour. But the success rate of the wild dogs is like 75 to 85%. A lion's success rate is like 50. So they're very, very successful hunters, and yet they just have this beautiful bond with their family. And so the lessons that we learn from the African animals, the lioness and the lion and the lion king, are the closeness of the family and the importance of the family, and that you can go out and do your job and, you know, have a life out there, but when you come back, the family has your back, and they are your home. That's your safety.
True. And then you talk about decisions, right? That keep moving forward with your decisions. How did you compare with the leopard?
Oh, the leopard was wonderful. The leopards are beautiful because they're very strong. They have a huge upper body, and they're very strong. And and when a leopard catches a prey, they will actually take it up in the tree. They will hike this thing up, and their prey weighs twice as much as they do. But because of their strong upper muscles, they take it up there to protect it, because the leopards are smaller than some of the other cats, and they're vulnerable. So it's so much work for them to get the animals. So they hike it up in the tree, and then they'll just sit in the top of the tree with these animals, and that is their food for 3 days. And when they come down head first. It's amazing to see, but they're beautiful. And the story that I mentioned is we had seen this. Is that okay?
Yeah. Please continue.
Okay, we had seen this leopard in the bushes, and she had her kill in there. And so we just stayed and just watched her, and she was in there a long time with her kill. Finally, she comes out, and understanding that the leopard will want to take this up in the tree, she's sitting there, and she's sitting on her haunches, and we're looking at her, and we see that this poor little thing is really wounded. She got wounded from the horns, in her neck and her back hip, and they were deep wounds. You could see the skin underneath. They were deep wounds. And she comes out from the bushes, and she leaves her prey in there, and she sits down, and she looks off in the distance, and there's only one tree, and it's a long ways away. And she looks at it, and then she looks back in the bush, and then she looks back at the leopard again, or back at the tree again. And it was just like you could see the wheels turning. How is she going to get that there because of this heavy wound in her leg? And so finally she walks away, and we follow her. And she leaves her prey in the bushes. And she does this long last look at it as she's leaving. And we follow her, and she's limping badly. And we watch, and we want to do something to help, but what do we do to help? And so she finally gets to some grass and she just circles and circles and circles, trying to find a place. And she finally lays down and starts licking her wounds. And it's getting really, really dark by now. So we head back to camp. And the first thing in the next morning, we come back to see if she's still there. And she's there and she's licking some water out of a little puddle. And and you can tell she's hurt. She's kind of crouched down. She's not her normal stature. And then she starts walking back to where she had left her prey. And she lays down several times and licks her wounds, and gets up and goes a little farther and does the same thing. And then she goes over and to where she'd left it, and there is nothing left. There's absolutely nothing left. When the hyenas get through with the meal, there's nothing left because they even eat the bones. And so she's walking around and she's eating, looking, smelling all these little tracks of the hyenas. and she just sits down and looks at it, and then she turns around and she looks at that tree again, and you could just see the wheels turning. I said, man, I should have taken it up in that tree. And it's amazing to see them hike this animal that weighs twice as much as they do up in the tree, and they're so fast. And lots of times you'd see them out in the Serengeti where there was miles and miles and miles and miles of grass and nothing but maybe a single tree or a single tree there. And there would be a leopard up there on the top just looking around, just hanging out. So they were wonderful. They were wonderful to see. Whoops, I can't hear your voice.
What was the lesson that you learned from this story?
The lesson that I learned from this story is to check your options. Do the very best thing that you can, which she did, and then check your options. And the most concerning thing about that story, because she was so wounded, is the hunter becomes the hunted. And I was so worried about this little thing. And for her to walk away, from that, it's very difficult for them to bring down an animal. And so the lesson that I learned is to choose your options wisely, and then learn to live with your decisions, and then move on. And because I was concerned that she would become hunted, a couple of days later, we were in the same area and we were photographing, and we saw a leopard up in the tree, and I was photographing her. And when I pulled the zoom in really tight, there was the big wound in her shoulder that I saw. And I said, "Yay, she made it, she made it." So she was beautiful, so she made it. So there were a lot of things that happened along the way to get there. And one of the times that I was able to use those life lessons from my dad was when we were living in Pennsylvania. We had just moved to Pennsylvania. My husband was starting a new job there. And I was having trouble getting around, walking. So the diagnosis was called post-polio syndrome, which is something that polio people, decades later, they get that polio because when the virus hits your neurons, that fire the muscles, years and years later, some of them aren't functioning anymore. So it's like a railroad that's running over the same track, and some of the rails are missing. So when you run them over that same train, pretty soon it just wears out. And that's what happens with post-polio. So I started looking for something that I could do, to help, because it was having trouble getting around. So I decided that nutrition would maybe be an answer. So I got heavily involved in nutrition and with a company. And because I had children and they announced that they were having a children's health study whereby children could get free raw fruits and vegetables in a capsule every day, that really caught my fire. That became a cause for me to get as many as possible. So it became the Children's Health Study. So I got heavily involved, and I was one of the first ones that got involved in this program. And at one point in time, I had more children enrolled in the health study than anyone else in the entire company. Because it was such a commitment of mine to help these children. And so the Children's Health Study morphed into let's see, family. I just suddenly forgot the name. Anyway, the family health. Healthy Start for Families. And now there are over 20 million children who have been in the program children and
Wow.
families who've been in the program. And that was something that we started way back when. And so that was another step to applying that lesson. So driving home from the doctor's office that day
Mm.
with my diagnosis of post-polio, I said, I had this mental conversation with my dad. Okay, Dad, here we go again. What are we going to do with this? So the answer was to get involved and do something,
Do something about it. Yeah,
do
no,
something.
that
Yeah,
makes sense. And basically
yes,
staying on the target, like as you check, what could you do?
yes.
So talking about the targets, do share with us the rhino story.
Oh, the rhino story. The rhinos are amazing because they're called, a group of rhinos is called a crush. And I think that's so important, it's just perfect. These guys weigh thousands of pounds, and the rhinos are very, very endangered because of their horns. They use them in Asia for their medicinal things that they use. Anyway, the rhinos are very, very territorial, but they keep their children with them, and their babies. They keep them with them for years, and they stay very close. But the rhinos are interesting because they're kind of they I'm trying to think of the right word I want to use. Anyway, they hold a grudge. So if you injure one, they will come back and look for you and find you.
Interesting.
And the same with the leopard, which is interesting. The leopard is one of the big five in Africa. And I didn't know that the big five meant that they hunted these animals on foot, not on foot. But a leopard is the same way. The leopard will retaliate 100 out of 100 times. If they're injured or they're harmed by a human, they'll come back after them again. It's amazing with the animals.
So you've had such a beautiful journey, and the key is life happens, and then how do we kind of keep on going, enjoying the life? Tell us the story as we get closer to the end of the show about the tipsy elephant.
Oh. That was so cute because we're driving along and we can see the elephant way in the distance. And the favorite tree of the elephants is called the marula tree. The marula tree is very honored. It's a sacred tree in Africa. And it has fruit on it, and it's a very nutritious fruit for your, nutritionally for your body. And so the elephant was under the marula tree eating, but as the fruit ripens, the fruit itself ripens. The nut is inside the fruit, but as the fruit ripens, it ferments sitting on the ground. And so here's the elephant over there just munching away at all this, and pretty soon he's just kind of like this. And the guide actually said I could get out of the vehicle, which is a total no-no, and walk up close to him and take a photo, which is in the book. So I'm standing on the ground and the elephant is right there. And he's, he's just like this, and he's got his back foot back and one foot up, and he's got his trunk down for balance. And the monkeys get into this game, and the vervet monkeys, and they're so cute. And so the monkeys are up there chattering and running through the trees like crazy. They're throwing the fruit down to the elephant, and eating fast. It's just this really cute game. And the elephants are eating as fast as they can. And if the monkeys stop throwing, the elephant looks up at them like, well, so they throw down more fruit, and it's just a delight. The elephants can reach pretty high, but the marula trees are very, very tall. So there were some people that were in a Land Rover in front of us, and they were watching this whole game. And when they saw me get out with the elephant to take the picture, their guide gave them permission to get out too. So one at a time, they went over because they wanted a picture of them with the elephant right behind them. So one at a time, they all come out. There were about 4 of them, and they get their picture, and then they scamper back and get in their vehicle. The elephant follows them over to their vehicle, and he lays his head on the frame of their vehicle. And all these people are just totally frozen in place because they tell you in Africa, never make eye contact with an animal because they view it as a threat and they might retaliate. And also to keep very still. So these people are sitting there just like this. They aren't moving a muscle. And the elephant is just there, and he's taking this little nap. He falls asleep, leaning his head against the frame of the. Finally, he wakes up and he totters off to the next tree. But it was just such a delightful game. And people say, well, that couldn't really happen. But marula fruit is made into a liqueur, and people drink the liqueur. And some of them get a little tipsy too. So it can happen.
Yeah, no, so many lessons over here. You know, you started out life with polio, where like, you know, the life situation was like, where could you have moved? And from there, you went into not only once, but like so many times to get your photographs, connect with nature, and make your dreams come true. So if you were to give us like, you know, 2 to 3 life lessons from your life, what would you share with our audience?
I would share, excuse me, that if you make that decision in the first place, that, let me grab a drink here, sorry. That it helps if you have that decision first in place, that, you know, whatever happens, speed bumps happen to everyone in life, unexpected. So I think making that decision ahead of time that you're just going to go forward. It's like Alexander Graham Bell would always say. He said, you know, when one door closes, another one opens. So there's always a door that's open somewhere. You just have to find it. So I think the most important thing is that, number one, you decide ahead of time you're going to be able to do this. And two is you just go out and do it. You just jump on it and go out in your life and do it.
Where can people find you? And share us the link to your website, and where can they find your book? Tell us about your book.
The book is about, it's all the photographs and the stories are some of what I have told you today. And the photographs are there that show what's happening with these animals and right in the middle of the story. So people can really see it. It was like my circle of interest with my circle of magic with photography, so people can see what I saw and feel what I felt. So that was the exciting part. And I wrote my book for 2 reasons. Number one, to share with people so they could feel like they were actually there and, you know, get to know the animals and love them as much as I do. And the other thing was to shine a light on the scary thing about the animals and how they're poached.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad.
It is very sad. It is very sad.
And yeah, and that was one of the reasons, like, I wanted to shine the light on this beautiful stories that, you know, we kind of look the other way. Not look the other way, but like we are not even like aware, right, what's happening with them, and like whatever we can to support them, it's important to do that. And what is the name of your book, Robin?
Okay, the name of the book is African Animal Adventures, and it is on you can find it on my website, which is robinpulley.com. And and the gift that I have for people, I did some little line drawings. These are drawings actually from the photos in the book. And this beautiful little thing is a baby kudu, and she had just had breakfast with her mom, and so she's licking her lips, you know, getting the last bit of milk off her lips. But so there are animals, photos of the animals, and you can use them as a little coloring page. But sorry. But quickly back to the animals. There are millions and millions of people that go to Africa every year. It ranges from 13 million to 30 million that go to Africa every year to see the animals, and it's so important that they are still there. So, and right now, the scary thing about it is that the animals have, you know, challenges against them because they have climate change and they have habitat loss, which is 1.5 million acres of trees and forestation are cut down every year in Africa. And so their area of range gets smaller and smaller. And also, the poaching estimates are around $23 billion a year.
Oh,
You know, even my beautiful little leopard's whiskers are poached. And so And I have
So basically, like the message you're sharing is don't buy the animal products because that's what
yes, don't buy the animal products. Yes.
that's what gets
Yes.
them poached. So that's
Yeah.
what we can do as consumers and like raise the awareness of it. Oh, that
Yeah.
just breaks my heart.
Oh, it breaks my heart too, because you just love them. Because for the African animals, it's all about survival.
Yeah.
And it's really important. So I just want to help them survive so I can go hug them again.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us, Robin, and thank you for the good work that you're doing, and keep spreading the word.
Oh, I will. And thank you for all that you do. You're doing an amazing job.
Absolutely. Well, you take care, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for all the work to save our wonderful planet and wonderful animals, like, that I'm sure we can coexist with. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. And if the story has touched you, be sure to share the episode with everyone and help share this episode, and so that we can spread the awareness and save those beautiful animals and such beautiful stories, heart-touching stories. And let us know how we can support you. And also thank you, Juan, for the technical support. And we'll see you next time. And wishing you all a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving with you and your loved ones. And I'm so thankful to you. And thank you, Juan. Take care and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.